All right, we got another video going, guys. I know it's been a couple of days. I've been kind of busy, so apologize about that. But I have tried to upload a little bit, just to keep you guys engaged and what's going on. So we're gonna go back into Project 2025. That last video was more just like really telling about the positions that are in the Congress and how that works, or as far as how those positions work, who they answer to, things of that nature. I think this next section is going to be pretty much the same thing. But I think we're going to be talking more about the executive office. So we're going to get into that. Now, I will say this, it is kind of long. It's about 30 pages. So with that being said, it may be broken down into a part two. I don't know how I feel about it, as of yet. But it's probably going to be broken down into two parts because, like I said, this section is pretty long, and it's talking about the executive branch of the president. So I'm going to go ahead and share my screen, and we're going to go ahead and get into it because I do not like long intros. Make sure you're subscribing to the channel. Make sure you're liking these videos, and also make sure that you are sharing this video out. I don't care who you share it to. Everyone needs to know, especially before you get to November and get out here and start voting. Everyone needs to know. So this is going to be Executive Office of the President of the United States, and Russ Vought wrote this portion. So let's see what it says. It says, in its Article 2 of the U.S. Constitution makes it abundantly clear that the executive power shall be vested in the President of the United States. That enormous power is not vested in departments or agencies, and staff or administrative bodies, and non-governmental organizations or equities and interests close to the president must set and enforce a plan for the executive branch. Sadly, however, a president today assumes office to find a sprawling federal bureaucracy that all too often is carrying out its own policies and preferences, or worse yet, the policy plans and preferences of a radical, supposedly woke faction of the country. The modern conservative president's task is to limit, control, and direct the executive branch on behalf of the American people. This challenge is created and exacerbated by factors like Congress's long tendency to delegate its lawmaker power to bureaucracies and pervasive notion of expert independence that protects so-called expert authorities from scrutiny, to presumed inability to hold career civil servants accountable for their performance, and increasing reality that many agencies are not only too big and powerful, but also increasingly weaponized against the public and the president, who is elected by the people and empowered by the Constitution to govern. In Federalist number 47, James Madison warned that the accumulation of all powers, legislative, executive, and judiciary, in the same hands, whether of one, a few, or many, and whether hereditary, self-appointed, or elective, may justly be pronounced the very definition of tyranny. Regrettably, that wise and cautionary note describes to a significant degree the modern executive branch, which, whether controlled by the bureaucracy or by the president, writes federal policies, enforces that policy, and often adjudicates whether the policy was properly drafted and enforced. The overall situation is constitutionally dire, unsustainably expensive, and in urgent need of repair. Nothing less than the survival of self-governance in America is at stake. The great challenge confronting a conservative president is the for aggressive use of the vast powers of the executive branch to return power, including power currently held by the executive branch, to the American people. Success in meeting that challenge will require a rare combination of boldness and self-denial. Boldness to bend or break the bureaucracy to the presidential will, and self-denial to use the bureaucratic machine to send power away from Washington and back to American families, faith communities, local governments, and states. Fortunately, a president who is willing to lead will find the executive office of the president, the EOP, the levers necessary to reverse this trend and impose a sound direction for the nation of the federal bureaucracy. The effectiveness of those EOP levers depend on the fundamental premise that It is the president's agenda that should matter to the departments and agencies that operate under his constitutional authority, and that, as a general matter, it is the president's chosen advisor who have the best sense of the president's aim and intentions, both with respect to the policies he intends to enact and with respect to the interests that must be secured to govern successfully on behalf of the American people. This chapter focuses on key features of and recommendations for several of the EOP's important components. Okay, hold on. There's something going on. Let's pause. To it, my dog is doing the most. Okay, so it says U.S. Office of Management and Budget, the OMB. Now, the OMB assists the president in the in the execution of his policy agenda across the government by employing many statutory and executive procedural levers to bring the bureaucracy in line with its budgetary, regulatory, and management decisions. Properly understood, it is a president's air traffic control with the ability to charge to ensure that all policy initiatives are flying in sync and with the authority to let planes take off and at times ground planes that are flying off course. OMB's key roles include developing and enforcing the president's budget and executing the appropriations laws that fund the government, managing agency and personnel performance, procurement policy, financial management, and information technology. Developing the president's regulatory agenda, reviewing new regulatory actions, reviewing federal information collections, and setting and enforcing federal information policy. And scroll down some more, coordinating and clearing agencies' communications with Congress, including testimonies and views on draft legislation. It says the OMB cannot perform its role on behalf of the president effectively if it is not intimately involved in all aspects of the White House policy process and lacks knowledge of what these agencies are doing. Internally to the EOP, ensuring that the policy for policy formulation procedures developed by the White House to serve the president include OMB is one of any OMB director's major responsibilities. A common mean for those who intend to evade OMB review is to argue that where resources are not being discussed, OMB's participation is optional. This ignores both OMB's role in all downstream execution and the reality that it has the only statutory tools in the White House that are powerful enough to override implementing agencies' bureaucracies. The director must view his job as the best, most comprehensive approximation of the president's mind as it pertains to the policy agenda, while always being ready with actual options to affect that agenda within existing legal authorities and resources. This role cannot be performed adequately if the director acts instead as an ambassador of the institution interests of OMB and the wider bureaucracy to the White House. Once his reputation as the keeper of the commander's intent is established, then and only then does OMB have the ability to shape the most efficient way to pursue an objective. Externally, the director must ensure that OMB has sufficient visibility into its deep caverns of agency decision making. One indispensable statutory tool to end is to ensure that policy officials, the program associates directors, PADs, managing the vast resources management offices, RMOs, personally sign what are known as the apportionments. In 1870, Congress passed the Anti-Deficiency Act to prevent the common agency practice of spending down all appropriate funding, creating artificial funding shortfalls that Congress would have to fill. The law mandated that all funding be allotted or appointed in installations. This process, whereby agencies come to OMB for allotments and appropriated funding, is essential for the effect. Is essential to the effective financial stewardship of taxpayer dollars. OMB can then direct on behalf of the president the amount, duration, any apportion, apportioned funding to ensure against waste, fraud, and abuse, and ensure consistency with the president's agenda and applicable laws. The vast majority of these appointments are signed by career officials, the deputy associate directors, that's DADs, um, until the Trump administration placed its responsibility on the PADs and thereby opened wide vistas for oversight that had escaped the officials. The Biden administration subsequently reversed this decision. No director should be chosen who is unwilling to restore apportionment decision making to the PAD's personal review, who is not aggressive in wielding the tool on behalf of the president's agenda, or who is unable to defend the power against attacks from Congress. Interesting. Like these people really think that Congress is against them. Like they're really acting as if like, oh, everybody that's in Congress and everybody that's in these three branches, if it's not in the executive branch, if it's not a part of that, like they're against us. That's a projection, because that's the other way around. If everyone is doing it wrong except for you, it's probably you. I mean, that's simple. You're the common denominator. It should be noted that each of OMB's primary functions, along with other executive and statutory roles, is carried out with the help of many essential OMB support offices. The two most important offices for moving OMB at the will of the director are the Budget Review Division and the Office of General Counsel. Director should have a direct and effective relationship with the head of the BRD, considered the top career official within OMB, and transmit most instructions through the office, because the rest of the agency is institutionally inclined toward its direction and response accordingly. The BRD inevitably will translate the directions from policy officials to the career staff, and at every stage, it is obviously vital that the director ensure that this transition is an accurate one. So you're going to play telephone. Got it. In addition, many key considerations involved in enacting a president's agendas hinge is existing legal authorities. The director must ensure the appointment of the general counsel, who is yet creative and fearless in his or her ability to challenge legal precedents that serve to protect the status quo. This is vital within OMB, not only with respect to the adequate development of policy options for the president's review, but also with respect to agencies that attempt to protect their own institutional interests and foreclose certain avenues based on the mere assertion and not proof that the laws disallow it or that. Conversely, attempt to disregard the clear statute of Congress. In general, the director should empower a strong deputy director with authority over the deputy for management, the PADs, and the Office of Information and Regulatory Affairs, which is the OIRA, to work diligently to break down barriers within OMB and not allow turf disputes or a lack of visibility to undermine the agency's principal budget, management, and regulatory functions. OMB should work toward a one OMB position on behalf of the president and represent this view during the various policymaking processes. Okay, sounds like a dictatorship. Budget. The United States today faces an untenable fiscal situation and owes 31 trillion in debt that is steadily increasing. The OMB director should present a fiscal goal to the president early in the budget developing process to address the federal government's fiscal irresponsibility. This goal would help to align the months-long process of developing the actual proposals for inclusion in the budget. Though some mistakenly regard it as a mere paper-pushing exercise, the president's budget is in fact a powerful mechanism for setting and enforcing public policy at federal agencies. The budget team includes 6 resource management offices that, together with the BRD and other components, help the director of the OMB plans that bear on every major aspect of policy formation and execution at federal agencies. Through initial priority setting and ongoing supervision of agency spending, OMB's budget team plays a key role in executing policy across the executive branch, including at many agencies wrongly regarded as independent. The RMOs, each of led by a political appointee known as the PAD and a career DAD, are separated into 6 functional units: national security, national resources, energy and science, health, education, income, maintenance and labor, transportation, justice and homeland security, treasury, commerce, and housing. Because the RMOs are institutionally ingrained in nearly all policy making and implementation across the executive branch, they play a role in helping the director to implement the president's public policy agenda. However, because each RMO is responsible for formulating and supervising such a wide range of policy details, many granular but critical policy decisions are effectively left to the career professionals who serve across administrations. To enhance the OMB's directors' ability to help the president drive policy at the agencies, the existing 6 RMOs divided into smaller subject matter areas, allowing for more PADs, and each of these PADs should have a deputy PAD. This expanded pool of RMOs with additionally political leadership would enable more comprehensive direction and oversight of policy development and implementation. Regardless of whether Congress adopts the president's full recommendations, the president should reintroduce the concept of administrative pay as you go or administrative pay go. This simple procedure requirement imposes budget neutrality on the discretionary choices of federal agencies, of which there are many in nearly all areas of policymaking. The branch to control what it exactly. The principal may occasionally yield to other out, overarching requirements, okay, such as presidential regulatory budget. In nearly all cases, administrative pay-go plays a unique and indispensable role in enforcing fiscal responsibility at federal departments and agencies. The president should use every possible tool to propose and impose fiscal discipline on the federal government. Another sort of that would constitute abject failure. Management. The management office of OMB, the M side, as it is often called, is responsible for carrying out important agencies' oversight functions, many of which are statutory. The management team includes the following offices led by presidential appointed Senate confirmed individuals. See what it says. The Office of Federal Procurement Policy, or OFPP, the Office of Performance and Personal Management, OPPM, the Office of Federal Financial Management, OFM, the Office of Federal Chief Information Officer, OFCIO, and lastly, the Made in America Office, MIAO, which was added by the Biden administration and is not a Senate confirmed slot. Each of these offices has responsibilities and authorities that the president use to help drive policy across the government. It is vital that the director and his political staff, not the careerist, drive these offices in pursuit of the president's actual priorities and not let them set their own agenda based on the wishes of the sprawling good government management community in and outside of the government. Many directors do not properly prioritize the management portfolio, leaving it to the deputy for management, but such neglect creates purposeless bureaucracies that impedes the president's agenda. An M train to nowhere. The OFPP. This office plays a critical role in leading the development concerning federal contracting and procurement. Through the Federal Acquisition Regulatory Council, which is generally chaired by the OFPP administrator, the OFPP helps the director to set a wide range of policies for all those who contract with the executive branch. In the past, these government-wide contracting rules have played a key role in helping to implement the president's policy agenda. This office should be engaged early and often in OMB's effort to drive policy, including by obtaining transparencies and entities that are awarded federal contracts and grants, and by using government contracts to push back woke policies in corporate America. They're going back. The OPPM. Through this office, the director helps federal agencies to establish their performance goals and performance review processes. OPPM also works with the U.S. Office of Personnel Management, or OP, to establish and manage personnel policies and practices across the federal government. The director should instruct OPPM to establish annual performance goals and review processes for agencies that reflect the president's agenda. OPPM should also be a part of the president's strategy to set and enforce sensible policies and practices for the federal force. OFFM, this office helps the director to root out waste, fraud, and abuse in federal programs. For example, through the Do Not Pay program. Wow. It should be a part of efforts to save precious taxpayer resources. Okay. OFCIO, this office guides the federal government's use and adoption of internet government and save taxpayer money. As a function of its leadership role, it is critical in interagency discussions on a wide range of technology issues. The office, thus, is an important part of the president's effort to modernize, strengthen, and set technology adaptation policy for the executive branch. MIAO. Building on in the example and work of the Trump administration, President Biden established this office to centralize, carry out, and further develop the federal government's Buy American and other Made in America commitments. Its work ought to be continued and further strengthened. Regulatory and informational policy. OMB's OIRA plays an enormous and vital role in reigning in the regulatory state and ensuring that regulations achieve important benefits while imposing minimal burdens on Americans. Now, the fact that you're trying to give us burdens in general is already too much for me. The president should maintain Executive Order EO 12866, the foundation of OIRA's review of regulatory actions. The administration should likewise maintain the recent extension of those standards to regulatory actions of the U.S. Department of Treasury. Regulatory analysis and OIRA review should be required of the historically independent agencies of the Office of Legal Counsel has found it legally permissible. If the current administration proceeds with its declared intent to modify aspects of EO 12866 or review OMB Circular A4, the related document that provides the foundation for cost benefit analysis, the next president should immediately begin to undo those changes and develop a rigorous data driven approach that will result in the least burdensome rule possible. The next president should also revive the directive in Executive Order 13891 that significant guidance documents must also pass through OIRA review. Because OIRA review often leads to future policy, funding for OIRA tends to pay large dividends. Yet over the is that right? Yet over the years, funding for OIRA has diminished full-time equivalent FTE employees to form regulatory advanced teams that will consult with agencies on cost-benefit analysis and good regulatory practices at the beginning of the rulemaking process for the most important regulations. These teams would help agencies take cost benefits analysis into account from the beginning of their rulemaking efforts, which in turn would review. To preserve the integrity of OIRA review, the staff would consult at the beginning of the rulemaking, should not handle its eventual review. The next president should also reinstate that the many executive orders signed 13777, 13891, 13892, 13893, 13924, Section 6, 13979, and 13980 should be revived with modifications as needed. Executive Order 13132 on federalism should be strengthened so that the state regulatory and fiscal operations are through what is called cooperative federalism programs. Additionally, the president should revise and sign an updated version of President Ronald Reagan's Executive Order 12630 on federal takings. The next president should strengthen implementation of the Informational Quality Act, robustly use the authority of the Paperwork Reduction Act, carefully enforcing the Privacy Act, and ensure the sound execution of all and other information policy functions. Regulatory cooperation agreements can also promote the further adoption of good regulatory practices, which improve market conditions for all America and her allies. Mhm. OIRA should also work with other components of OMB to revise and apply OMB's uniform guidance for grants and agreements and ensure that federal contract and grant guidelines satisfy EO 12866 and other centralized standards as appropriate. But as a result of this act, the next president should work with Congress to pass significant regulatory policy and process reforms, which could go a long way toward reigning in an administrative state. Excellent examples of such legislation include the Regulatory Accountability Act, SMART Act, Good Act, Unfunded Mandates Accountability and Transparency Act, and RAINS Act. Finally, the next CRA, which allows Congress to undo midnight regulatory actions, including those discussed as guidance on an accelerated timeline. To leverage the CRA's power to the maximum extent, Congress and President should enact the Midnight Rules Relief Act, which could have packed and voted on at the same time. Oh, wow. Not even gonna think about it, huh? Immediate and robust use of the CRA will allow the president to focus his rulemaking resources on major new regulatory reforms rather than devoting months or years of to undoing the final rulemakings of the Biden administration. Legislation clearance and coordination. We're going to try to unpack this a little bit. Legislative clearance and coordination. OMB plays a critical role in ensuring that the executive branch is aligned on legislative proposals and language, agency testimonies, and other communications with Congress to direct the aggressively and promote the effective engagement of the executive branch in legislative processes. Okay, we will come back on the National Security Council. Before we do that, let's go back. There's a couple of things important things to point out. For one, we can actually go backwards because it doesn't even matter. Um, to work with Congress to pass significant regulatory policy in the administrative state. Excellent examples of the legislation include the Regulatory Accountability Act, SMART Act, Good Act, Early Participation Act, and the RAINS Act. Okay. So we're clearly going to have to break those down because I'm sure everyone doesn't know what all of those acts, actually had in them. So we would definitely have to break those down. So let's see if we can get some videos out. Because I'm not even sure exactly what each one of those have. However, they're wanting to bring those policies or those acts back into policy. I'm also looking at the fact that there's basically wanting to make a decision and go ahead and approve that decision that's being made by the president. Basically at the same time. So, like they said, instead of waiting all this time to have it pass and having everybody basically put their word in on it or their opinions in on it, they want to do it all at one time. Now, the part about that is so dangerous, right? It's because if there's something that they're doing that is not right or that is detrimental to the country, actually messes up. We're not going to know until it actually happens. So that can be very dangerous because, as we can see, um, some he's an emotional person. Sometimes he operates off emotion, and that can be pretty pretty detrimental, honestly, to the country. It can definitely be that's dangerous. That's really dangerous. And so that he feels that is necessary to be put in charge, or the person he has put in charge, if they deem that, oh, this is what the president wants, then they can put that stuff into play without anybody else's input on it. So inevitably it's creating a type situation where um basically the president and his right hand man is able to just give it a yes or a no. Um, Now these other executive orders, I noticed they had a lot of them. Once again, that is something that has to be looked up as far as the executive orders. I'll tell you what we're going to do. We're going to highlight this so that I can that they're talking about with them. And hopefully it's not a bunch of trying to say, because as you can see, some of this stuff, even the way that this was written by Mr. Vaught, was not really that easy to understand. Uh-oh. So let me see here. And as you can see, also they use a lot of acronyms, which can be a little bit confusing as well, because it can be hard to keep up with who is who and what it is that they do. Um, I mean, I'm not a I'm not a criminal justice or any type of political major, so I'm just a regular person just reading this as I'm reading it to you, and I'm just giving you my opinion as to what it's talking about and what it's referring to. I do know there's a lot of people out here that do have law degrees, that are breaking this down, and trust me, I tune into those people as well, because there's some things that I don't understand, and they're able to break it down. Now, I'm not quite sure that I've made it to the portions that I normally see people talk about, but we're getting there because the whole thing needs to be read. Okay. Now, I understand that this may not be the meat and potatoes of it all, and it's working up to it. But basically, from what I'm getting, is they want to kind of restructure um, how the executive office is run, basically. Um, and they're basically wanting to take pretty much everything that the Biden administration has done, and reverse it. Like, for example, like the Do Not Pay program. Um, uh, Trump people. So that is interesting how they would want somebody to work, and basically if they don't do it the way that they want it to be done, that they not get paid. That's crazy. Or if they feel like they can say that, oh, basically done something bad, then we're not going to pay you. That's crazy. As far as and like, it sounds really weird. Yeah. And then you have all the people that feel those over loyalists and things concerning the budgets and all this stuff according to what they believe the president wants or whatever is in his agenda. And then, you know, he signs off on it, basically. I do apologize for something. I don't know what it is. Okay. Okay. And StreamYard. So we're gonna stop there. Okay, we're gonna stop there for this moment because I don't want this to get too lengthy, and because it is so wordy, I don't want it to be like where it's too confusing, right? So we'll start up on the next portion. I think we have maybe like 10 more pages left. So we will do a part 2 on the executive office for the president of the United States and how it is they want to basically comprise that. Um, Leave your comments in the comment section. Let me know what your opinions are on what I've read so far. How does that make you feel? Are you in agreement with it? Are you not in agreement with it? I definitely would love for a discussion to be had about it. And if you know any of those acts or any of those executive orders by number or are familiar with those, please feel free to put that in the comment section as well. Like I said, make sure you are subscribing to In the Court of Public Opinion. I'll try to put that link in the description for you so that you can get right over to that page and you can subscribe. If you're on Facebook, definitely make sure you're sharing this content out. Make sure you're throwing up the thumbs up and also leave your comments in the comment section as well. I definitely thank everyone for their engagement. And until the next video, peace out.